On the Road with Kelly and Bob is brought to you by Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings. Made in America, made to last. Coming up on this episode...
Mayberry is a fictional town, and everything's fixed in 30 minutes.
Hi, we're Kelly
and Bob Phillips, and we're on the perpetual road trip of America's back roads,
where the journey is always the destination.
Hey there, and thanks for joining us for this episode of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. I'm Bob Phillips.
And I'm Kelly Phillips. Do you remember some of those television shows that you just couldn't wait to watch when you were a kid? I mean, for me, it was Brady Bunch, but best of all was probably Leave It to Beaver.
Wait a minute, but that's Leave It to Beaver. That's my
okay,
time
I was watching
period.
reruns.
There's a few years difference here, folks,
just
between us. And Leave It to Beaver, I mean, I grew up when that was in first run. And Beaver was my age when we were the same age.
I loved that show.
Yeah, I mean, and I watched things like The Rifleman.
I watched The Rifleman.
Lucas McCain and his boy Mark,
yes.
And all that. But there was one show that my family hardly ever missed, and that now I've seen all of them in reruns for sure. And one of the reasons I liked it was because it always taught you a lesson. It was The Andy Griffith Show. It's a tune that's been around so long, even the Whistler's mother could have been a little girl when it was written. And it's a tune that paints a picture of simpler times in a simpler town where everything always turns out okay.
The Andy Griffith Show was a television staple from 1960 until 1968. Only 249 30-minute episodes that have entertained multiple generations for more than 6 decades. In fact, it is said that The Andy Griffith Show is always on the air somewhere in the world at every minute of every day.
And it all started right here in Mount Airy, North Carolina.
Yeah, Andy Griffith, born and raised here, went to UNC Chapel Hill, to Carolina, and growing up, he was always interested in music and drama and stuff.
Mike Cockrum grew up in Mount Airy, North Carolina, though it was after the first run of the series had ended. Still, like every generation after, he watched the show in reruns and knew that the fictional town of Mayberry was modeled after his and Andy Griffith's hometown.
And even though he knew people who grew up with the famous actor, it never occurred to Mike just how famous Andy Griffith was until one day when he came home to Mount Airy.
When they was doing the highway dedication for the Andy Griffith Parkway, it was a big deal. Andy was going to come to town and they was going to dedicate the highway. I think it was 2002. I was working third shift at the time. It seemed like it was on a Wednesday and it was pouring the rain that morning. And I'm coming home from work. It just hit me. I said, I'm going to swing by town and just see how many people is coming to see this Andy. It was a few hours before he was going to be here. They had a barricade up. Andy was going to have to walk right by, so I got me a prime spot to see Andy. And I'm there, and there's a few people coming, and then more people came. It got close to time for Andy, and there was a crowd 10 deep behind me. Got just talking to people. I was talking, waiting on Andy. I was the only one from Mount Airy. Somebody had come from everywhere just to see Andy.
And you're the only local.
I'm the only local there. They're asking me all kinds of questions. So I'm just kind of telling them about Mount Airy. Andy came and done his thing and all that. And when I left, I said, I need to come up with something for these tours. And so I, being an old car nut, I restored my 67 Mustang when I was 15 years old and was just an old car guy. And it just hit me. I said, I'm going to make me a squad car and give these people a ride around town.
In Virginia, there's a place called Mayberry. It's just a little place where everybody goes and shops, and his mama come from up that part of the country. And so they chose that name for Mount Airy. Now, people got a little bit upset with Andy because he went from Mount Airy to Mayberry.
Don Bunn also grew up in Mayberry, Mount Airy, and today he is a driver and tour guide with Mike Cockrum's Squad Car Tours, one of the most popular tourist attractions for folks who come to this spot in North Carolina, hoping to see the real-life Mayberry and hear the stories about Mount Airy's famous hometown boy.
He said, because Mount Airy is a real town, it's got real problems, but he said Mayberry is a fictional town, and everything's fixed in 30 minutes, of the show.
The Andy Griffith Show, starring Andy Griffith.
You got to go.
Well, I'm all ready. I'm just waiting for you.
With Ronnie Howard.
I'm not. I come from Egmond-White.
Is that anywhere near Raleigh?
No, it's in England.
Also starring Don Knotts.
Right there is Andy's mural. It's supposed to be 5 different time periods of his life.
I see him all the way over there on the right in his later years.
Yep, in Matlock.
Yep, that's the Matlock, Andy.
Yeah.
Take a trip in the replica of a squad car, complete with siren, from the Andy Griffith Show, and you'll see and hear about all the places from the show that are real-life places in today's Mount Airy.
And in some of the producers and directors of the show, before they filmed the show in California, they came home here with some of them, and they gave them a 2-week tour. And during that tour is when they wrote the script based on Andy's hometown. They went back to California to film. It used about 150 names, from what I understand. And on Main Street, you might see names that reflect the show. Right there's the Snappy Lunch, mentioned on the episode, and the barbershop next door to it. And the Snappy Lunch, I'll tell you how old it is. This started right there in 1923 before Andy was born.
Really?
It's
The
been there for
Snappy
102
Lunch
years.
has been there over 100 years.
102 years.
Now, that's the home of the pork chop sandwich?
Pork chop sandwich. And right past these trees, look to your right, you're going to see the statue of Andy Nope going fishing.
These days, the town of Mount Airy, North Carolina, has fully embraced its role in the success of the Andy Griffith Show. And even though this town is a real place with real-world people and even real-world problems, folks from around the globe still flock here in hopes of catching that feeling that somehow all will be right with the world.
Because in the fictional town of Mayberry, the good guys always win, and happy endings are guaranteed.
What is it about that show that struck a chord with the viewers?
Well, I think, it's just wholesome TV. That every show's got a moral to it. It's, you could even base a whole quarter of your Sunday school class on the Andy Griffith Show. They have all the materials out there to where your Sunday school class can do a whole quarter of it. And we see church groups come through here that their Sunday school class did a quarter on the Andy Griffith Show, and then they'll come here and visit.
Because they taught a lesson.
It's a
in each
lesson on
episode.
every show, so. Yeah.
A lot of times it was Andy talking to Opie.
Now, the golden rule says that you're supposed to be honest and square dealing with other folks. Now, telling your friend that them seeds is gonna grow licorice sticks, well, that's kind of far away from what you'd call square dealing, and it's awful close to what you'd call cheating.
I didn't tell him that they grow licorice sticks, Paul. I just didn't tell him they wouldn't. Well, I got cheated.
Well, now, that still don't make it right. And I know that you wouldn't feel good at cheating your friend. Now, I tell you what to do. Now, you just keep them licorice seeds and forget this whole trade until you got something worthwhile to dicker with, all right? All right. Now, just always remember, honesty is the best policy.
You just listen to your pa, son. You'll never go wrong on that.
As we travel around the country in search of these stories, we keep a list of the places we want to visit again, don't we?
Yes.
And Mount Airy, North Carolina is definitely one of those places. Our time there was too short.
And we highly recommend that you start your visit by taking a squad car tour. There's just something special about riding around town in a 1960-something Ford Galaxy police car while you see the sights that is really special.
Think of it like one of those hop-on, hop-off bus tours they have in the big cities. It's $50 for a carload of up to 4 people, and it'll give you the lay of the land and some great behind-the-scenes stories that you might not hear otherwise.
Now, the show lasted from October the 3rd, 1960 till April of 68, 8 years. And the first number one character to pass away when the show went off TV was Floyd the Barber, Howard McNear. And he died early in January of 1969 from complications of strokes. But if people kept up with the series through the years, they could actually see his health declining. Because the first 3 seasons, he was really active on the set. He had a stroke which paralyzed his left side to where he could never ever walk it like he did to start with. Well, at first it took him off the show. That didn't sit well with Andy Griffith because Andy loved that man to death and the role that he played as the barber. Mm-hmm. So once he recovered to the point that he could, he brought him back on the show. But when he comes back, he's still basically, especially, and I believe it's the 4th season, you're going to see him, he'll be sitting in his chair, out front on the bench, in the courthouse, in cars, and sometimes, especially the 4th season, you're going to see him standing next to a podium, talking to a group of people in an auditorium, but you never see him walk to it. You never see him walk away from it. And standing at the barber chair, combing Andy's hair, and you see him doing that, but again, you never see him ever walk again. Yannette's character again was Frances Bouvier, or Aunt Bee. Born and raised in Manhattan, New York in 1902, but she retired and settled in Siler City, North Carolina in 1974. She bought a 17-room, 5-bath mansion, sight unseen, lived there for 15 years till she died in 1989, and when she died, she left a house full of cats and a 66 Studebaker with full flat tires. Now, Andy used to do interviews and share stories about Frances, and what a tremendous actress she was, because in real life, Frances Bouvier was ornery as an old bull.
Really?
Yep, a 100% recluse, and she hated Andy. One thing about the lady, you was working with one tremendous actress.
Yes.
And probably one of the most highly trained on the show, because she had 26 years of Broadway acting under her belt. But that turned out to be exactly what her problem was. But before she passed away, 4 months before she died, she got a hold of Andy and said, "Andy, I'd like to apologize to you." And he said, "For what?" She said, "Well, I felt like I was hard to work with on the show, and I was very unkind to you at times. Would you please forgive me?" He said, "Oh, Frances, you don't need to apologize to me." He said, "Oh, that's part of the showbiz. That's just part of the work." He said, "Please don't feel bad about that." And I have to commend Andy for going about that as a gentleman and not a jerk. Right there is the museum. It was unveiled in 2004 by TV Land, and Andy Griffith was here for that event right there.
Wow.
But if you took the museum in, what you're going to see, and I mean, he collected a lot of things, different ones, like Andy's shirts and badges he wore on the show, both sets of keys they used on the set, both plaques off the courthouse door, the gavel, the telephone, the Eagle paperweight that sat on the disc is right back there, Andy's Matlock suit, Otis's suit, Don Knotts salt and pepper suit, Goober's hat, and 2 outfits he wore on the show. But downstairs, I'll have to admit, is my favorite, and that's from Thelma Lou. Barney's girlfriend, Betty Lynn, was her real name. She lived with us her last 14 years of her life. She moved here in 2007 from California, and I was fortunate enough to give her a squad car tour. And I'm going to tell you what, just as precious a person you ever met in your life. And I didn't realize how famous she was, because we talked about everything about her being here, and I didn't say nothing about her fame or fortune. But down in the basement of the museum, she's got a room full, and she was best friends with and co-starred with Betty Davis and Jean Bride.
Oh, wow.
Robert Young, and many top actors and actresses throughout her career she's done movies with. So if you go, don't forget to go down there, because that's, to me, the most fascinating display of all. Jerry Van Dyke was on one episode. During the episode, he steps out of the courthouse and Andy points to the left, said, "Jerry, go down a few blocks to the corner of Haymore and Rockford and be the crossing guard for the school." Now, the reason that was mentioned on that episode aired in 1965. In 1965, Andy's mom and daddy was still living over right in that little house. There's Andy's home place right there. So that's why he mentioned Haymore and Rockford on the street corner. Now, the story behind the house is this. You see the first year on that sign, which is 35, because Andy was born June 1st, 1926. The first 9 years he was alive, he and his mom and dad, to a certain extent, was the next thing to homeless. They had no place to point out, so that we were called home. He was born in an old shack, from what I understand, close to the railroad tracks on South Street, close to the depot, which is still there, the old depot. The house is not. But anyway, for 9 years, they were fortunate enough to bounce around Mount Airy between relatives till finally his daddy was able to buy the house in 35. Andy was an only child. He was married 3 times, but he had no children of his own. But now he and his first wife, Barbara, adopted a boy and a girl named Dixie and named Sam. Now, unfortunately, Sam passed away in 1996 from alcohol poisoning. But now Dixie grew up to get married, to give Andy 3 grandchildren, lives in Colorado, doing fantastic. Well, several years ago, they got in touch with her and asked her to come out here during the Mayberry Days, which is the last full week in September, to do autographs. Well, her first response to that is why? She said, I'm not a celebrity. So I am not some famous actress. Would you like to tell me who in the world at Mount Airy, Oklahoma wants my autograph? Well, anyway, they kept on needling her until she finally, reluctantly agreed to come in. And when she got here, couldn't believe what she seen. She said, I cannot believe that there's that many people here for the Mayberry Days. Plus, she hadn't thought about the fact that everything that took place, all the events, was to pay honor and tribute to her daddy. So that changed the whole way of thinking, so, except for 1 year, she's been back here every year since then.
How many times a day do you give people tours of Mount Airy, North Carolina in one of these cars?
Until my mind runs dry. I've been doing it 17 years. I have done 15. And one day. I love doing them. I love meeting people from everywhere. And I mean, they come from everywhere. But as I get older, my mainspring gets rusty. And I can't wind it back as much.
And then there's Mike Cockrum, the owner of Squad Car Tours. He spends most of his time keeping these old Ford Galaxy police cars running. But we got a chance to sit down with him in the replica of Andy's office over there in the jailhouse and hear his thoughts about all of this.
Well, I was born and raised here in Mount Airy. Spent my whole life here in Mount Airy, and of course saw the town change a whole lot. Back growing up, you didn't see people walking around with cameras and tourists. We didn't have tourists then. I mean, we had a few things around town called Mayberry, like Mayberry Mall, and we was mainly known for our Granite City is their nickname, and it just kind of evolved.
So how many cars now do you have that look like the cars?
We got 7 cars that we use, and then like on a Saturday in the summer, we'll have all 7 running.
Who are the people who come here that want to take this tour and come to see essentially Mayberry?
They're from all over the country, all over the world actually. You see all walks of life. But the thing they all have in common is you never see sour people here. Everybody's in a good mood. I never thought I'd be in the tourism business. I'm an old car nut. I'm an electronics guy. And that's what I did for RJ Reynolds for 37 years. And a mechanical guy, I've built and worked on stuff all my life. And I never dreamed that I'd be running a tourist attraction.
Did you watch Andy Griffith?
I did. In fact, it's the first thing I remember watching on television. My mom was a nurse at the local hospital here, and there was a lady a couple blocks from the hospital who used to keep me when I was a little kid while she worked. At that babysitter's house, little black and white television with a round screen on it. The first things I remember watching on TV is the Andy Griffith Show, the Beverly Hillbillies, and I remember Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. Well, that's 1969. So if you think, I was already watching reruns, even at 1969, it's already on reruns. So I didn't have a clue, and I didn't have a clue that the lady that kept me, Andy his parents just lived like 2 blocks from there. I had no clue of that. I like Barney and Andy Griffith Show, and of course, watched it all my life.
You're sitting here in City Hall at Andy's desk. You've got Andy's phone right there. You've got the gavel right there. Right over there, I see both of the jail cells.
So what all do you have in this block, basically?
Well, you have the Wally's filling station, which was a real working gas station when Andy was growing up, and his dad, is where they used to trade, get the oil changed and get their gas and stuff. The guy that ran the station, it wasn't called Wally's, I forget what the name of the station was, but the guy that worked there, his name was Wallace, they called him Wally. So And if you notice on the Andy Griffith Show how Wally's filling station is just a little bit outside of town. It's actually a dirt road. Well, this is set up the same, where we're just a little bit away from the town here, a couple blocks. And we know that it's the inspiration for Wally's on the show.
Now, is that where Gomer worked?
Gomer and Goober, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then how did this part come to be?
Well, it was just, I was telling, the guy that owned it, I'd been in business 3 or 4 years and was getting more people. And he had this building here that was it was a car lot here. And I was telling him, and we got to talking, I said, man, we should make a replica courthouse. And my idea was to do a replica of the courthouse and have clothes for people to dress up like the characters, and we take pictures of them like they do at the beach, them old time pictures.
Right.
Yeah, that was my idea. So we got to thinking about it. We never done the picture thing, but yeah, we recreated the courthouse here and made a pretty good replica here. I mean, it's...
You've even got the key where Otis can reach out and get in and unlock his own jail cell.
Right, so there's so many pictures taken in here, and I usually have people close the door and then be reaching for the key. They're gonna break out.
Tell us about Mayberry Days.
Oh, Lord, people come from all across the country. Not sure the exact number it draws in here, probably 70 to 100,000 people. They come from everywhere. People bring in squad cars. There's probably 20 squad cars running around town.
People dress, some of them.
And impersonators, and some of those impersonators are I mean, it's like, man, you got to do a double take. There's a lady that used to come here who was dressed like Aunt Bee, and you'd think it was Aunt Bee. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then there's a lady that does a good, Charlene Darling. She's really good. There's Barney's and Ernest T's and every character you'll see at the Mayberry.
Tell me there's a goober that shows up.
Oh, yeah, great goober. Hotels are full for miles. So our main street's blocked off, and it's a huge street festival.
Is there a part of Mount Airy, North Carolina that is still, in your mind, it's still Mayberry?
I think of it as Mayberry. It's a good place to live. It's a good place to raise your kids. And I'm not saying we don't have problems like a lot of cities, but we don't have that many problems. So.
And you go downtown and it seems like almost every business has something to do with
the show.
Right, because the streets are full of tourists. Yeah, it's just a good place to live, a good place to raise your kids. And you can find a little bit of everything. I tell people you can find everything on Main Street. If it's not on Main Street, you don't need it.
You don't have plans of ever leaving?
No, I don't. And now we have so many people moving here. Like if a house comes up for sale anywhere, I mean, the market is unbelievable. People moving here from all across the country. A lot of them coming from Mayberry, a lot of them likes the weather, some of them's running from politics. It's just a lot of people moving here from all across the country.
Good place to be, huh?
Yeah. Thing is, the people that move here, let's don't try to change us. You're coming here because you like it the way things are. Don't bring your ideas. Don't try to change us.
You don't want Mount Airy, North Carolina to become California.
No. Let's leave it like it is. That's what brought you here.
Come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale.
And we want to thank you again for joining us for this week's edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. New episodes drop every week. You can also follow us by seeing what's going on behind the scenes by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and tell your friends you can listen to On the Road with Kelly and Bob wherever you get your podcast. Or you can simply download that free Odyssey app and listen anytime, anywhere.